across 5 centuries. Michel de Nostradamus' veiled prophecies whisper of a cataclysmic convergence, a terrifying sequence of events laser focused on 2025 to 2026. Imagine cryptic verses, etched in the shadowy lexicon of a 16th century seer, now shuddering into chilling precision. They speak of fire falling from the sky, empires fracturing like glass, and a single, formidable modern leader standing at the vortex of global chaos, his ambition potentially igniting a global inferno. This is no fanciful tale. It is the horrifying countdown pulled from the dust of ancient quatrains. Objectively, Nostradamus employed symbolic, often astrological language, making his predictions malleable to interpretation across eras. Yet, the uncanny parallels are undeniable. The designated time frame, the emphasis on Eastern aggression, and the archetype of a great deceiver manipulating nations toward ruin. Could Vladimir Putin, with his hauntingly familiar rhetoric of restored glory, his shadow stretching over Eastern Europe, and his nuclear saber rattling, be the figure haunting these prophecies? The mystery deepens as Nostradamus' imagery mirrors contemporary dread, cities weeping ashes, skies alight with weapons beyond medieval comprehension, and a false savior promising order while sowing discord. Historically, Nostradamus documented patterns of human conflict and hubris, not predetermined fate. His value lies not in literal fortune-telling, but in his stark allegorical warnings about power's corrosive potential. The ominous shadow cast over 2025 feels less like mystic decree and more like a grim reflection of our own geopolitical tinderbox, escalating wars, eroding alliances, and the specter of technological annihilation is the world sleepwalking into. Nostradamus' vision, guided by one man's quest for legacy? Or does the true prophecy lie in humanity's recurring failure to heed history's darkest lessons? The centuries-old code remains, its final cipher yet to be unlocked as the clock ticks toward a fateful horizon. Step into the candlelit study of Michel de Nostradamus, the 16th century apothecary turned oracle, whose quill scratched centuries of secrets onto parchment. His very name conjures images of shadowed prophecy, a man who peered beyond time's veil through a hypnotic trance induced by ritual herbs and a brass bowl of still water. Objectively, his methodology blended Renaissance astrology, biblical symbolism, and classical history into cryptic 4-line verses called quatrains, deliberately obscure, like a cipher waiting for its key. Yet the uncanny echoes of his visions rattle our modern age, the chilling rise of a figure he dubbed Hister, interpreted as Hitler. The flames devouring London in 1666 foreshadowed as the great fire of the City of Light. Even the moon landing, he will come to travel to the corner of the moon. These historical hits anchor his legacy not as cheap mysticism, but as a chronicler of humanity's recurring patterns of catastrophe and hubris. His words were never straightforward chronicles. They were deliberate puzzles, shimmering with allegorical beasts, celestial alignments, and veiled place names, a linguistic labyrinth designed to reveal its truths. Only when the predicted hour was upon us, the great mountain, 7 stadia, round, he wrote, evoking volcanic ruin, after great trouble for humanity, a greater one approaches, hinting at cascading crises. Now, as the world trembles on the precipice of 2025, a haunting consensus emerges among modern interpreters. Nostradamus foresaw this exact epoch as a time of great upheaval, a pivot point, where the threads of fate converge with terrifying clarity. Historically, his Century X, Quatrain 70, fixates on the 7th month of 1999 as the start of a prolonged cataclysm, while Century I, Quatrain 50, speaks of new laws dominating a new land near the North Pole, text now reinterpreted as pointing squarely toward the mid-2020s as the climax of this dark arc. The scholar Mario Reading, in Nostradamus, The Complete Prophecies for the Future, dissects these timelines with forensic precision, arguing the 1999 date was symbolic, marking the dawn of a 25-year descent into chaos culminating around 2025. Critically, we must acknowledge the Rorschach nature of prophecy. Nostradamus' vague, poetic language allows endless reinterpretation, yet the specificity of the timeframe in his work, combined with motifs of Eastern tyrants, climatic wrath, and wars unseen by 3 generations, cast an unnerving shadow over our present. His quatrains whisper of a world strained to breaking, alliances fracturing the divided scepter, false saviors manipulating fear, the great leader feigning devotion, and nature itself rebelling, the heavens burning. Is this merely the perennial human condition mirrored in antique verse, or did Nostradamus through his trance-induced glimpses, truly lock onto the frequency of our imminent crisis? Analytically, his enduring power lies less in supernatural foresight and more in his grasp of cyclical history, the way empires calcify, demagogues exploit fear, and technology outpaces wisdom. He documented not predetermined doom, but patterns, warning that without vigilance, the 2020s could become the arena where humanity's oldest demons, greed, tyranny, blind faith, and power, unleash their final act. The pieces of his 2025 puzzle escalating, global conflict, climate disasters, and the resurgence of expansionist autocrats now lie scattered before us. Whether decoded as divine warning or psychological allegory, Nostradamus compels us to ask, are we merely actors stumbling through a script he glimpsed 500 years ago? Or does his true prophecy warn that ignoring history's echoes is the greatest danger of all? Descend now into the heart of Nostradamus' chilling vision for our immediate future, the horrifying core of quatrains that seem to map a cataclysm onto the years WW3 and 2026 with unnerving specificity. It begins with the Eastern Bears. Fury, a prophecy vibrating with present dread, the great leader of the North, driven by ancient pride and shadowed by advisors of war. The imagery is stark, primal, a ruler consumed by resurrected imperial ghosts encircled by hawks, whispering vengeance. Objectively, the North has long been interpreted as Russia in Nostradamian scholarship, the ancient pride evoking Tsarist or Soviet ambitions, the advisors of war mirroring the hardliners consolidating power around Vladimir Putin. The first crescendos will unleash a storm of fire upon the land of the setting sun. Land of the setting sun, a hauntingly beautiful, yet terrifyingly vague, descriptor. Analytically, most modern decoders see this as Ukraine, battered and bleeding in the west, or potentially a broader strike against NATO's eastern flank. The impact isn't merely invasion, it's escalation beyond comprehension. Imagine not just grinding trench warfare, but the blinding flash and seismic roar of tactical nuclear weapons employed on European soil. A taboo shattered. Cities like Kharkiv or even Warsaw vaporized in an instant, rendering maps obsolete. Or picture a massive, final offensive. Waves of men and machines crashing forward under a canopy of hypersonic missiles. A desperate gamble for decisive victory before time or internal collapse runs out. The very soil of Europe, Nostradamus implies, is destined to drink deep of fire and bloodlust. Simultaneously, another fuse ignites far south. The eagle and the Crescent Clash, when the bird of prey clashes with the crescent moon over the burning sands. The symbols are unmistakable. The American eagle, proud and predatory, locked in mortal combat with the Islamic crescent, embodied most potently by Iran and its proxies. Critically, this isn't mere allegory. It maps onto the tinderbox reality of the Middle East, the embers of Gaza still glowing white-hot, Hezbollah's rockets poised, Iran's nuclear program hovering on the threshold of the unthinkable. The prophecy continues, the false peace shatters, drawing in the lion and the rooster. The false peace, a scathing indictment of brittle ceasefires, and diplomatic mirages evaporating under the desert sun. The lion, ancient symbol of Britain, and the rooster, emblem of France, represent NATO's reluctant but inevitable plunge into the abyss. The impact is a regional inferno exploding into global conflagration. Picture carrier battle, groups engulfed in missile swarms in the Persian Gulf, drone swarms darkening Tel Aviv's skies, Tehran's nuclear facilities disappearing in mushroom clouds, triggering waves of asymmetric terror across European capitals, drawing the alliance into a quagmire that makes Iraq and Afghanistan pale. This is the spark Nostradamus foresaw, leaping from the burning sands to ignite the world. Yet, the true zenith of horror arrives from above. The sky turns to fire. Heavens rain terror unseen since ancient wrath. This is not the arrows or cannon of Nostradamus' time. This is the shrieking descent of hypersonic missiles, moving faster than comprehension, evading all defenses, the silent, crippling pulse of electromagnetic weapons plunging continents into primordial darkness, perhaps even the nightmare of orbital strikes. Rods of tungsten screaming from the void to obliterate command centers. It speaks to a technological wrath so advanced it might as well be divine punishment. The verse concludes with apocalyptic desolation. The cities of the seacoast weep ashes. Imagine not just explosions, but the systematic, annihilating bombardment of coastal megacities, New York, London, Shanghai, Istanbul, subjected to relentless barrages of conventional or nuclear hellfire. The impact transcends immediate destruction. Picture the societal collapse, supply chain severed, digital networks erased, governments fragmenting into warlord fiefdoms. Famine stalks the irradiated hinterlands as fields lie fallow under nuclear. Winters pall. Hospitals overflow with victims of radiation sickness, their bodies betraying them from within, while the very air carries the bitter taste of cremated hopes and poisoned rain. It is the unraveling of civilization itself, rendered in ashes and screams. Amidst this orchestrated ruin rises the figure Nostradamus seemingly reserved for our era. The false savior and the antichrist figure, amidst the chaos, the prince of discord rises, promising order, but delivering only chains. Here, the prophecy transcends mere warfare and pierces the realm of psychological and political manipulate. Objectively, the description mirrors tactics employed by modern autocrats exploiting crisis. The strong man who steps into the maelstrom, his voice amplified by state media, offering salvation through iron-fisted control. He promises to restore glory, cleanse the chaos of decadent rivals, and impose a brutal, centralized order. Analytically, linking this directly to Putin is compelling. His rhetoric frames Russia as a besieged bastion of tradition, fighting Western moral decay, positioning himself as the indispensable guardian against anarchy. Yet the prophecy reveals his core, delivering only chains. The promised stability is a gilded cage of surveillance, repression, and perpetual war footing. The verse concludes, his shadow stretches long over the divided kingdoms. This is the chilling geopolitical consequence, a Europe fractured, NATO strained to the breaking point by internal dissent and the sheer weight of conflict. Vulnerable nations swaying under the shadow of Russian influence or coercion. Crucially, Nostradamus didn't place this figure in isolation. He embedded him within the context of this specific, prophesied global war period to 0-5 to 0-6 suggesting the chaos is not just his backdrop, but his crucible, the very disorder he exploits to seize greater power, tightening the chains while the world burns. The horrifying core thus reveals itself, not random disasters, but a terrifyingly plausible sequence, Eastern aggression triggering Middle Eastern explosion, escalating to technological apocalypse, all exploited by a figure offering poisonous salvation. Is it literal prediction, or a dark mirror reflecting humanity's eternal capacity for self-destructs when led by pride, fear, and the false prophets of order born from chaos? The quatrains offer no comfort, only a stark warning etched in the fire of potential futures. The chilling alignment between Vladimir Putin's trajectory and Nostradamus' foreboding symbols transforms speculative intrigue into a disquieting plausibility. Objectively, Putin's actions since 2022 read like a grim enactment of prophecy. The Ukraine invasion echoes the Eastern Bear's fury. His nuclear brinkmanship mirrors the sky-raining terror, and his anti-Western diatribes resonate with the Prince of Discord's rhetoric promising order through chaos. Analytically, his motivations deepen the unease, now aged 72, shadowed by persistent health rumors and geopolitical isolation. Putin exists within a temporal cage, a leader acutely aware of his mortality and desperate to cement a legacy as the restorer of Russian greatness. Is 2025 his perceived last chance? The question hangs thick with dread. It suggests a leader potentially willing to escalate beyond conventional limits, deploying tactical nukes, triggering a wider Baltic confrontation, or shattering global cyber networks, gambling everything in a final bid for historical vindication. Before time runs out, critically, this personal urgency collides with a world perfectly primed for catastrophe, mirroring Nostradamus' perfect storm conditions. NATO expansion fuels Kremlin paranoia of encirclement, resource wars loom over energy routes and Arctic riches, cyber warfare silently erodes trust and infrastructure. These tensions form a tinderbox where a single spark, a miscalculation in Kaliningrad, a drone strike on Moscow, or a desperate bid to break Ukrainian lines, could ignite the sequence Nostradamus outlined: regional conflict exploding into global war, technological terror raining from the skies, societal collapse exploited by strong men. Historically, Nostradamus documented how ambition collides with circumstance to birth catastrophe. Putin embodies this archetype, a leader weaponizing ancient pride, surist revanchism, manipulating fear of Western decadence, and exploiting fractured alliances, NATO disunity. Yet, the prophecies pose a haunting duality. Is Putin merely a man shaped by these forces? Or is he the active catalyst Nostradamus foresaw, the deliberate architect of the storm of fire, Could one man's obsession with legacy truly fracture the world? Or does Nostradamus warn that leaders like Putin are inevitable products of the very upheavals they unleash, a dark symbiosis of ambition and global vulnerability? The dots connect not with supernatural certainty, but with the terrifying logic of history repeating. When seismic geopolitical shifts meet a leader unshackled by consequence, hurtling toward a self-imposed deadline, the prophecy feels less like mystic fate and more like a reflection in a cracked mirror, showing us the future we risk creating. The year 2025 looms in Nostradamus' text not as a vague warning, but as the epicenter of his foretold great upheaval, a temporal vortex, where centuries of cryptic verse converge with terrifying focus. Objectively, quatrains like Century I, Quatrain 50, and Century X, Quatrain 70 to fixate on this mid-decade window, with scholar John Hogue noting Nostradamus saw it as a pivot point in human destiny, a threshold where global systems would strain toward rupture. Why does this date resonate now? Because reality itself seems to be synchronizing with the prophecy's rhythm. Critically, 2025 marks a perfect convergence of fragile tipping points, the tinderbox of U.S. elections, threatening political chaos in the West, Russia's symbolic military deadlines in Ukraine, or ominous anniversaries of Soviet collapse, invoking Putin's revenge, while the climate crisis escalates droughts and migrations, and brittle economic foundations crack under debt and inflation. These aren't abstract omens, they are headlines screaming toward January 1st. Historically, Nostradamus embedded timelines in celestial alignments and symbolic numbers 7th month, 25-year cycles, yet their power lies less in astral math and more in their uncanny alignment with human patterns of crisis. We stand at the precipice he described, a moment when geopolitical tension, environmental stress, and societal fracture reach critical mass. The clock isn't just ticking, it's throbbing. Each election rally, each Arctic ice sheet calving, each missile test in Kaliningrad echoes Nostradamus' countdown. Are we witnessing the calibration of prophecy, or simply the recurring human tragedy of ignorance amplifying predictable disasters? The window is open. They are approaches, whether decoded as divine foresight or a mirror to our follies. 2025 demands we ask, is this the future Nostradamus saw or the future we chose? By ignoring the patterns he so eerily mapped, for a fleeting moment, a sliver of light pierces Nostradamus' ominous forecast. The seer himself whispered of free will, a divine loophole, where prophecies reveal not inevitable fates, but potential paths branching from human choice. Objectively, this philosophical underpinning suggests his visions were warnings, not sentences. Cosmic roadmaps where catastrophe could be rerouted through collective awakening, diplomacy, or moral courage. Historically, this offers solace. Interpretations once deemed certain crumbled into dust. The famed 1999 Quatrain, Century X, 72, predicting the king of terror from the sky, passed without apocalypse. Plagues he foresaw for 2020 manifested as COVID-19 devastating. Yet not civilization's end. These failures prove his symbols are malleable, his timelines fluid. Could we yet avert 2025's shadow? Imagine leaders stepping back from brinkmanship, climate accords finally honored, the digital sphere purged of disinformation actions aligning not with prophecy, but with wisdom. Yet, even as this hope flickers, reality undercuts it with brutal force. Each day deepens the grooves of doom. Putin's nuclear rhetoric grows colder. Gaza's embers ignite Lebanon, cyber attacks cripple hospitals, record heat waves bake continents, and democracies fracture under extremism. Analytically, Nostradamus documented how patterns solidify where warnings go unheeded. The signs he described: eastern aggression, clashing eagles and crescents, skies weaponized. Discordant princes rising aren't vague portents anymore. They are front-page horrors unfolding in real time. The path to 2025 no longer feels like one possibility among many. It feels like a river accelerating toward a waterfall, its current strengthened by every act of hubris, every failed negotiation, every ignored scientific alarm. Is free will an illusion when momentum becomes this terrifying? Or does Nostradamus compel us to ask, have we, through apathy or arrogance, already chosen the path his quatrains so vividly and horrifyingly laid bare? The door remains ajar, but the gale rushing through it smells of smoke and iron. The weight of Nostradamus' vision for 2025 to 2026 settles like ash upon the present, a chilling conclusion etched in quatrains of fire and shadow. Objectively, his prophecies converge on a singular Harrowing tapestry, World War III igniting from Eastern ambitions. Cities reduced to necropolises under advanced weaponry. Millions swallowed by displacement or oblivion, all orbiting the nucleus of conflict. A powerful, determined leader whose shadow stretches from Moscow across the fractured West. Historically, Nostradamus distilled human history's darkest rhythms. The rise of tyrants exploiting chaos, the fatal arrogance of empires, the catastrophic intersection of technology and tribalism. This is not mere prediction, it is a dark reflection of our perennial vulnerabilities. Yet as the dissonant chords of reality swell heartbeats sensing with missile launches, news fragments screaming of border clashes and cyber blackouts, the ultimate question crystallizes: is this our inevitable future, hurtling toward us with the force of fate? Or is it the seer's most urgent warning, a dire map still legible enough to re-rule? The ancient quill has spoken, the pieces are upon the board, Putin's gambits, NATO's strained resolve, climate's gathering fury, the tender dry forests of geopolitics. Analytically, Nostradamus offered no ironclad destinies, only patterned cyclical tragedies that repeat when wisdom fails. The year 2025 approaches not as a mystic decree, but as a threshold of consequence, a moment where humanity's choices, from Kyiv to Washington to Tehran, will either defy the prophecy or become its grim architects. The world holds its breath, but breath implies life, and life implies agency. What pulses now is not passive dread, but the electric tension of decision. Do you see Putin's shadow deepening across Nostradamus' verses? Does the drumbeat of current events sync with the seer's cadence? This is not prophecy's end, it is our vigil's beginning. Share this warning if it resonates. Dissect it, debate it, subscribe as we track the unfolding science, the diplomatic near misses, the military escalations, the environmental collapses that will define whether 2025 becomes Nostradamus' darkest chapter or humanity's reclaimed dawn. The clocks, hands tremble, the quatrains watch. Speak now in the comments below. Do we march toward prophecy, or can we still rewrite it before the hourglass empties?